Good afternoon, everybody. So I'm John Land from HQN, and welcome to the latest in our series of technology and innovation webinars that we've been running online throughout this lockdown period. Hopefully you've already been to some of them, but perhaps not. Rowley and Rob are both quite familiar figures, actually. They've appeared in a number of sessions already. This one is primarily focused on the recent white paper into smart technology that HACT produced not so long ago. And so our main speaker this afternoon is Rob Ray from HACT, and we'll also be joined by Rowley Maggs from Smart Rent, who will be talking about their product, but also in wider terms about the practical application of smart technology. And I think in some ways this afternoon serves as a bit of a call to action to the sector to try and get things moving a little bit, try and embrace smart technology in terms of its many and varied applications, and trying to get a bit of momentum going, I think, through pilots and expressions of interest. I'll be your host and I'll be asking questions throughout, but that's probably enough from me. Before we actually get the first session underway, I think we've got a poll that we want people to sort of answer as they're listening to the first session. If we can make that live now, that would be useful. Max? Yep, there we go. So there it is. Where are you with smart technology in your organisation? And there's 4 options, which I'm sure you can all read anyway. But learning, actively researching, implementation, and in operational use. And we want to sort of go into a bit more detail of that later, but it's a snapshot really of where both participants and the sector is. So please answer that. And I'm going to hand over now to our main speaker, and it's Rob Ray from HACT. So welcome, Rob.
How you doing, guys? Can I close the poll?
Yeah, just close it on your own screen.
Sorry, that's just for me. Right, okay, so, hello, guys. As John says, we want to make this a real kind of interactive thing, and we've done quite a lot of these sessions, and there's been really encouraging enthusiasm, particularly around the kind of, on the back of the COVID-19 situation, and also just building on an emerging understanding in the sector around what we, how do we kind of accelerate some of our change, and what are the obstacles and things that have kind of either are presenting opportunities or capabilities that we need to build on, what is the government saying, and really, what are the kind of moving parts of it that we want to try to address. And we're very excited, and please bear in mind that what we want to do here is really, we've got this white paper, I'm going to explain to you the contents of that in a second. But we're really looking for as much engagement as we can from you guys to try to start a conversation. We're looking, it's a very follow the leader kind of sector. I love the sector dearly. When I was a wee boy, I didn't ever dream about being a housing person, but here we all are. And I think that one of the things that we want to try to kind of get across today is that we're kind of both realising the capabilities that we need in order to be able to drive that progress, but we're also realising the opportunities and things that we perhaps didn't realise we could do from a tech point of view. And that's really where this seems so fortuitous to talk to. We've got Phil Lamb on the panel later on, who's the man kind of behind Smart Rent, and Rowley, obviously, who some of you will recognise through the data standards work that HACT's done and so on. But it's really about, again, inviting your questions and understanding how we can make, start to put this sort of stuff to work, and galvanise together some of the extremely good innovation that's going on, but make it less disparate. If you could flip on a slide, Rowley's too. So, there's 2 slides in here that my daughter says, why do you do that? And this one she gets, which is the broken record thing. As I said, I love the sector. But we're very good at describing a problem without really doing anything about it sometimes. I've worked in housing for 20 years. HACT has been around for 60 years. We're an innovation agency. That's how we describe ourselves now. We obviously work in health. We're involved in the data standards. We're involved in control trials. One of our board members, Rachel Jones, is joined the session today. What we're trying really to do as an organisation is create a space and a platform for the kind of bolder, more vanguard, pioneering organisations, and even the organisations that want to change but maybe don't have the capacity. So there's, there are big organisations. Scale has got a lot to do with it. The broken record is there because it's really like, and I'm preaching to the choir here a bit, but it's about trying to kind of embed and make the change mindset a bit more durable. I know that a lot of you guys are on this call, you get it, you understand data standards, you understand data life cycles, and you understand the opportunities for pulling ourselves from behind the curve into being able to deploy effective tech in our homes, and all the problems that that solves and opportunities that it brings. So what I would say just before I move on to the next slide, and just give you a bit of context around the white paper and also around the green paper that the government's produced, is around being able to galvanise. There's a lot of good innovation that is going on, and we were just discussing before you guys joined today's session that there's a lot of extremely good progressive and pioneering innovation going on. It can be sometimes quite myopic in the way that it looks into the centre. And what this is about is understanding that the get me digital, the rhetoric of saying it must be evidence-led strategy, the rhetoric that we must have customer-centred design. A lot of the time the words come out, but actually the practical application of that can sometimes be quite challenging. And HACT and our partners are here to try to bring to create a space and to bring organisations together, both inside and outside of the sector, to try to find the solutions and critically accelerate that change. What was an opportunity before 10 years ago? I wonder what Tesco does and all those things through the through the blinds. What happens in the private sector? In my view, materialised to a point, but we didn't really kind of grab that as much as we could have done. At the end of the day, this is about capabilities. Digital is not an end in itself, and a lot of things I will say in the next 5 minutes, you already know, and I think, and that's right. But there are two things to note about that. One, we need to be able to make sure that the rest of the organisation, that mindset pervades the rest of the organisation and the culture. And two, also that whether we're making sausages or dealing with vulnerable residents in COVID-19, or whether we're looking at these community anchors, or whether we're trying to develop community services, or whether we're trying to understand life cycles using data standards, these are all capabilities, and these are good in any scenario. This is about being agile, about being able to understand that the different aspects of what we do in terms of innovation are greater than the sum of the parts. If you do a slide really, please. Right. So the first two things, so I'm going to cover the last two, well, mainly the third one, cost and carbon. It was my daughter that said, why don't you make it the 4 C's? There needs to be a return, and Phil's going to talk about a bit about that. And you'll see, it's a bit of a no-brainer what we're going to talk about as far as smart rent is concerned today. But the carbon side as well, an emerging part of our requirements, although it's not the biggest fire at our feet for obvious reasons, is about reducing our carbon footprint, and we'll touch on that. Hopefully the third one, by extension, starts to help explain the first two, but I'm not going to tell you things that you already know about bottom lines and commercial returns and return on investment and so on. Other than to say that there is definitely an emerging mindset that if our relationship with our residents, particularly with the pandemic going on, is moving away from building homes to a more relational relationship, changing relationship with our residents, then we need to start to ask questions about what technology can help us deliver those things, but equally, how do we measure the impact of whether whether our interventions are successful? And what I mean by that is that maybe if we are starting to look at vulnerable residents and contacting them and understanding who we need to contact in the short to medium term and what the Housing Association of 2021 looks like, maybe management cost per unit or customer satisfaction in the event that we are pushing people towards employment and we don't want them to be happy with their lot, whether they're the right measures or not. But coming back to the smart rent in our focus today, I wanted to cover these four areas. If you go on one more slide, so I'm going to do this through a couple of mediums. One of it. First is the green paper, and the rest of the world. Now we're also, I think, by now streaming this globally. So that was the other thing I was telling my daughter, that we're going on a global stage today. It's always very good. So let's see if anybody's got any contributions. It'd be nice to see if anybody's watching this from another part of the world. If they've already got this sussed out, then please share it with us. If you go on to the next slide again. So, green paper, new deal for social housing. There are a number of different things in here, but one of the things I want to call out most, which is relevant here, before we talk about smart rent, is really about the stigma and the empowerment of residents. Now, I don't like the word empowerment, but a lot of smart home tech in the past, and our green paper, which I'll discuss in a minute, has very much been around, you put tech into properties to have a return on investment. That might be remote access, that might be lifts judder for 2 weeks before they break down, so if you have a sensor you can then go and, the predictive analytics is in there, and combining these technologies into one place, and we'll get onto that in a second. But the relevance really of the green paper here is around stigma. And now I didn't, who knew that social housing tenants also use Netflix or ordered things online and wanted to have be able to control their heating and have remote access and understand their carbon consumption and so on. Turns out that social housing tenants are just like everybody else in society. I think that is one of the underlying challenges of the green paper. We had a conversation, and I don't want to drop any names, but Dame Judith and I were chatting on Monday with the ISSG, and we were talking about the golden thread in the life cycle of buildings, and the role that data standards and that tech play in being able to accelerate that efficiency. If we assume that in a complex process of tenancy management, house building or whatever, that that somebody's going to drop the ball. Now, I don't want to cast aspersions about people's ability, but it's a very complex process, as you all know. But having visibility of data and having technology that produces the data and gives you that visibility, from the wider staff team that's delivering on the ground to people who are designing strategy leadership level, there is part of that golden thread. The stigma element of it really relates to, rather than putting technology into residents or customers or tenants, or whatever your proclivity is, housing, and then saying this is not a big brother thing, it's here so we can help with your service or improve the service and so on. We want to turn that on its head, and that's what the white paper seeks to do. The white paper starts to challenge that idea, and actually that why should social housing tenants not be afforded the opportunity to be able to control their life in the same way that private rented sectors would? And I'll get into some of the content of that. If you go to the next slide, Roly, please. Now, for the purposes of this presentation, and you may have heard me say this before, this is a turkey. My daughter at the very start, every time I used this, thought this was a dog. I'm not sure why, but for the purposes of this, is a turkey. And the turkey is about the past not being a very good predictor of the future. The global economic crisis being one of them. The fact that we were unlikely to have a pandemic anytime soon being another. The point is, if you ask a turkey on Christmas Eve what our relationship with the farmer is like, she'll probably say not too bad. What is my point here? It's just to get across the message that what we want to do is, we have complained about the limitations as a mainstay criticism of our inability to either understand and agree on performance information, about the impact of our interventions, about our corporate objectives, because performance information doesn't necessarily correspond between metrics and between outputs. The purpose of the turkey really is to understand that we have an opportunity now, and we're living one of those opportunities. Everybody's now got the hang of Zoom. Who knew housing sector could do that? Everybody's been sitting in offices with huge screens invested in order to Skype conference calls, but yet nobody ever, well, certainly in places that I worked, and I won't name any names, it was underused, and now it's our bread and butter. Really, please. HACT has produced this white paper, really, I think, to try to outline exactly those things. And I think one of the things I wanted to just to highlight, and we'll give you a link to the white paper. If you haven't read it already, then it's good. It's really a call to action. It is understanding that we do innovate. We can accelerate the way that we do things. It is, because of our current circumstances, something that has been brought into sharp relief and sharp contrast. And I think there is an ability to be able to cut away some of the bureaucracy that had held us back, less of the describing the problem and more bold progress and activity. Galvanizing those parts together, being less myopic in the way that we look at different things. You can have the best CRM in the world, but if you have rubbish data and people don't feel that it's a tool that helps them on the front line, then it isn't any use. Okay, so the idea is that these are vehicles or capabilities that pull together that are greater than the sum of their parts. I won't go through the whole of the white paper other than to say some of the information at the very beginning. It includes lots of use cases about some of this innovation that's happening. It's very progressive. In 2019, 30% of households in a survey that was part of this research showed that they were in the market for having smart tech in their homes. And by 2020, 6.3 million would have some form of smart tech. And the content of the report and the white paper will show those use cases and also what's happened that Phil and Roly are going to talk about in the States. But it's not equitable. And going back to my point about stigma and the tie-in with the green paper, the thing for HACT and for me and for my colleagues, and I guess for some of you as well, is about the consumer and equality in that respect. And I think that is part of the key to this. As I said before, this is not about justifying technology in people's homes in a way that they feel suspicious about. It's not about collecting data to shape services. This is really about understanding that at the moment, that 6.3 million is restricted to a 30% margin of people who earn over £30,000 a year. The problem with that, and the challenge that we have, is that consumers, including our residents, our customers, our tenants, consume things now on their own terms. And the consumer voice and the tenant voice is emerging on the back of Grenfell, on the back of the HACT report, on the back of the Green Paper. And I think the message there is that we are in a position where we are perpetually trying to increase, whether or not you agree with customer satisfaction as a measure is a separate HQN seminar, and see John for details. But one of the things about that is that if we are pushing people towards employment interventions and so on, we don't want people to be happy with their lot. And the caveat is, this is not about empowerment and enfranchisement at all. This is just about what's relevant in the context of people's lives. But the problem and the reason that customer satisfaction does not increase no matter how friendly and professional your housing officers and neighbourhood managers are, is because the consumer expectation in the way that people consume online services in the rest of their lives has become different. Even technology with a yellow light on, the taxi, if they were going home or it was raining or you were drunk or it was going the wrong way, I speak only for myself, we're in a situation where even that technology, there was a contract to be had, there was a discussion to be had. Now Uber drivers have agreed that, to the contract before they arrive. You used to wait for the scheduling of Sky movies, and there was millions of movies, but you had to wait till 8 o'clock till the next one came along before it was scheduled to play, and now you can record television and so Netflix, Airbnb. The consumer is now doing things on their own terms. When Family Mosaic asked 15 years ago when I was research director there, what is your satisfaction with the repairs service, which we know eclipses all other levels of satisfaction. The biggest cohort to express this, or the least satisfied cohort, were Black and minority ethnic women. And everybody was horrified and scratching their heads to understand that. But understanding the data and the interaction and the bigger picture that is provided by smart home technology, by data standards, and this kind of narrative, was that the Black and minority ethnic women were also the cohort most likely to be in employment, and therefore they were expressing dissatisfaction not with the service, but with the fact that there was no out of working hours appointments. If you'd like to go to the next slide, Willie. This is just really a summary. What I want to really get across, just as a final point before I hand on to Rolly, is this is an opportunity to not repeat. And you hear people talking about the new normal and all this sort of stuff. The problem operationally before digital, before channel shift, before online services, were accelerated into our lives and our work and our jobs and our interaction and our ability to be able to deliver services more effectively to our most vulnerable residents, and understand that not everybody has to have the same service, but should do so on their own terms according to need rather than a blanket service, was that we are looking to try to galvanize and pull together all of the moving parts of this. I will reiterate that this is a vehicle, and I know that I'm preaching to the converted here, and I know that it goes back to the broken record. I just want to emphasize that to optimize process, people, culture, the right people in the room, the more efficient process, reduction of failure demand in process reviews, whatever happens, whatever your bag is, it has to start from the prerequisite that these factors are interdependent, that you are, in order to optimize the impact of that, you need to recognize their interdependencies, and your design, your business design and your strategy has to be bold, and it has to understand how these things fit into something else. This is not about buying a white box that does something. I apologize again for, it's not meant to sound stating the obvious. It's meant to sound that we say the words, but we want to try to make this a reality. And one of the reasons you guys, I guess, are here is that we're looking really for pioneers and more vanguard organizations, not to make gigantic investments, but to try to give this a try, to try to put these into their homes and see what happens, to try to lead the rest of the sector to create the organization of 2020. That's all.
Thank you, Rob. That was really interesting. I know that there's a number of case studies within the white paper, and obviously there is some work that organisations are already doing. So it's not a complete whitewash in terms of the sector, once again, is failing to act, and smart technology does have some sort of momentum in some quarters. Obviously it's not broadly across the spectrum. But is it okay if you could just spend a couple of minutes talking about, you know, some of the good practice and examples that you have seen going on?
Yeah, and so yeah, I mean, thank you, Mr. Land, for, yeah, I don't, maybe I've become cynical in my knowledge. I think I would reiterate that there's a lot of very good innovation going on. We're doing a lot of work, I mean, and Rolly will cover some of this as well, but I don't want to steal any of his thunder here, but Vivid, for example, Salix, Renfrew Council, and all of these organisations, we do a lot with Tom Way from L&Q, looking at creating the first smart home and so on. And John and I we ran a session 2 years ago, actually, in fact, about that. My message, I suppose, is just to urge that kind of collaboration with Vivid and Salix. That was kind of split almost into two aspects. One was around the property and the asset. So that was things like a liftable judder And everybody was like, God, is that predictive analytics? And it was, right? And before it broke down, you could then go around and fix it before. It was understanding the research that we conducted with them to try to understand where there was common parts. You know, some organisations had 30 local authorities, and I worked for one of them where there was miles of travel, and whereas on the estates like Charlton Triangle, the family was ACAD, or in Old Oak in Acton, in Hammersmith rather, had those things where there was common parts and there was a relationship with the residents and so on. That worked much better and satisfaction was higher. Vivid Insights have looked at those aspects of technology. They've taken Xbox technology and they've got a sort of stick man and some, so that's about movement sensors and so on. So using existing technology, and I would emphasize that this is not about innovation. I know I work for an innovation agency. This is about adoption in some cases. And what we're doing is that technology exists. And one of the things that Rolly and Phil from Smart Rent have been able to do is take those individual factors. So Salix were doing the thing around Legionella meters in taps. People were doing things on using Xbox technology. People, in terms of movement sensors to make sure. So it wasn't invasive, but it was making sure that people were conducting their routines and in care for managing population perspective in shelter accommodation and so on. Yeah. The message of the white paper really is that we want all of this innovation that is existing is optimized. It is greater than the sum of its parts, and that really is what Smart represents. Yeah, it is combining those things together, and we're all in this. We're all pulling in the same direction, but we need to fall into a few holes along the way. But it just needs that bold approach to try to test this stuff.
Absolutely, thanks, Rob. And I think that's quite a seamless introduction into Rodi's session. So thank you for that. And I'll hand over now to Rodi for the Smart Rent presentation.
Fabulous. Thanks, Rob. I appreciate that. I think you've probably done 3/4 of my presentation for me. Smart Rent is a smart home automation company, and we bring the benefits of smart technology to the previously overlooked rental market. Specifically in the UK, the relationship between housing provider and resident has changed. And as Rob mentioned earlier, the HACT report, the Green Paper highlight the stigma of social housing that is long overdue. And I think this move has been accelerated both by higher expectations of residents who are increasingly consuming services on their own terms, and obviously more recently due to the COVID pandemic that continues around us. So in the wider housing context, digital native renters are already consuming an array of apps and services to remove friction from their own lives. And some of the more progressive housing providers that Rob just mentioned are leading the charge to bring those mutual benefits to their customers. So I'm here and my colleague Phil are here to talk about smart homes, digital transformation, and share some of those examples from the US that we can bring to the UK and share some of that knowledge. So we have some unique experience in this field because Smart Rent had its roots in large-scale rental housing management before transitioning to a tech startup to solve some of the challenges we face in the sector. Smart Rent has created proprietary enterprise software which integrates across industry-specific hardware to deliver an exceptional smart home experience. It's designed to create an efficient management and monitoring platform for landlords whilst empowering your residents with industry-leading technology. So our product has been tested at scale in the US for some time now, and as part of that growth, we're excited to be expanding into the UK. Like I say, I'll be sharing some of those lessons learned and see how potentially we can apply those to solve some of the problems in the UK context. Obviously, as a result of today, the first thing we did in preparation of working in the UK was to collaborate with HACT as a real-world example of a next-generation smart home solution for the future of the smart home white paper. And I think what stood out from the white paper for me is the imperative to embrace and build tech capability across service delivery. So whether it's to solve an immediate problem like COVID-19 using smart door locks has been mentioned in the chat already, or as an ongoing commitment to improving our customer services whilst reducing overall operational costs. After all, a smart automated home doesn't only serve the landlord, it promotes independence for residents, brings social housing into the digital age, and reduces the stigma, leveling the playing field. So it's an opportunity to truly move forward in all fields. I think HACT and Rob will echo this. It's one of those no-brainer moments where there's an opportunity to combine technology and innovation to create an operationally practical solution. So with the housing sector having additional regulatory compliance, it's facing intense scrutiny and expectation from all corners. So the outcomes of the white paper reflected that need to move in this direction for the UK, and those three key messages of implementing IoT does need to be part of your business transformation strategy, because there is a huge potential to save money and reduce carbon footprints, and ultimately it will empower your residents and communities. And certainly that's something we've seen in practice in the US over the past 12 years, with significant acceleration in the past 3 years. So my task, I suppose, is to show you how UK housing providers can take those learnings and experience a digital transformation in the US and use them to our best advantage here in the UK. So taking those first 2 points from the white paper, I'm just going to explore how SmartRent CEO Lucas Haldeman and his co-founders and colleagues, what drove them to build what SmartRent is today. So in 2008, as a technologist and real estate operator, our CEO Lucas was recruited to an operator of single family homes. They built up a real estate investment trust, and they went from 0 to 44,000 homes across 12 states in the US, buying up empty foreclosed homes in the wake of the financial crisis. So just imagine that became a problem in and of itself. Suddenly they had thousands of homes to manage, whether it was air conditioners left on or heating left on in the winter, whether they suffered excessive damage from undetected water leaks, or they just needed to provide access. A huge admin burden had arrived, and something probably many of you can relate to in terms of maintenance and just viewing access to potential tenants. Now we know you can solve a lot of problems with human power alone, but it's a lot easier when your homes are in one single area of operations, high density urban apartments or larger estates. And we can afford not to think too hard about it when all of our units touch each other. It's not efficient or cost effective, but it's easy. We can just throw additional human power at the problem to solve it. But that issue becomes more magnified when none of your assets touch each other, or you spread over a wide geographic area, say 4,000 homes spread over several hundred square kilometers or miles. So the team started looking for smart solutions to their problems. In 2008, IoT was still in its infancy. Blackberries were all the rage. I know, I had one, and the iPhone had just been released. It's amazing when we think how far we've come in such a short time. But there's already some good and established technology to connect locks, thermostats, and sensors. But no one had actually thought about how to put those all together in one platform at an enterprise level. No one had thought about how do we manage 1 million leak sensors, or how do we manage 44,000 digital door locks at scale. And that's the problem Lucas and the team set out to solve 10 years ago for their real estate investment trusts, and more recently in an advanced iteration for SmartRent, to bring those cost savings, efficiencies, and decreased risk to rental housing operators and their residents. So since SmartRent itself was founded in 2016, growth has been extraordinary. Last year alone, the company experienced a 600% increase in the number of connected units on our platform. And we've partnered with leading US real estate companies like Essex Property Trust, the MMA, and AIMCO, and I'll talk about some of their experience a bit later. So the question is, how do we take this innovation from the US into the UK market? There's, as Rob said earlier, there are a lot of good examples of innovation already in the UK rental sector. And we also know that historically we've seen barriers to large-scale smart technology implementation. Numerous UK pilot schemes have shown the benefits, but then lack the PropTech to integrate all those solutions efficiently across the operating platform. So the technology was effective, but didn't really work in unity. When the solutions are siloed, it holds back progress for the sector as a whole. So centralized management, smart rents, innovative approach helps solve many problems at once in one place, advancing progress overall. So that's great, Rolly. I hear you say, this is all words. Show me examples. Tell me some stories, how this has worked for landlords. So what you can see on screen now is what a typical smart home looks like for one of our operators and our customers in the US. They start with the same base smart home package for each unit to help control costs, improve efficiencies, limit damage, and overall improve their customers' experience of their home. So smart locks for access control, smart thermostats for temperature control, and leak sensors for asset protection and damage mitigation. All connected via the internet, via a smart hub. So if we look at how a smart home can digitally transform access, that was mentioned in the chat earlier. Keyless access simplifies everyday living for a resident. No lost keys, no lockouts. It creates flexibility in providing access to visitors and service providers. No more keys under the doormat like we used to do at my house, or having to coordinate with property services team to come and deliver services in the property. The resident can provide temporary access code to family members visiting from out of town, or provide a recurring but limited access to, say, the childminder on Tuesdays and Thursdays after school when somebody's coming to look after the kids when they're at school. With each scenario, when the door's open, the resident gets a notification around who's opened the door and what time. Think of the use case for vacant unit repairs. Smart locks on the doors offer immediate secure access to both the residents and indeed the maintenance contractors. It reduces the need for multiple trips to the office for keys and results in fewer miles driven. So we've got some support for sustainability goals there too. For example, in the US, on some of the community or garden estates, it's not uncommon to see the service team driving around the estate in a golf cart to go back to the management office to get the right set of keys to enter a property and deliver a service. So imagine just the time saved in void turnarounds for multiple trades accessing a property, each with their unique code, which is logged every time the door's opened. Or indeed, what about just the costs of rekeying doors? So one landlord has told to me recently it costs him an average of 59 quid each time he rekeys a lock, and it takes his maintenance staff close to an hour to complete each unit. So we can save that there too. So smart apartment technology eliminates these financial and labor costs entirely. Simply confirm the move out on the housing system, the unit set to vacant mode, and everyone in your business has their own unique code to access that property. And we've got a record of when they accessed and how they accessed it, which we can then control. So what does that look like? You can see a representation of a smart block on the screen in front of you. We have a raft of technology to monitor and control the environment within homes. Climate controls are automated via a smart thermostat, and a series of sensors collect data on environmental conditions such as humidity, temperature, and noise. And this is growing more and more important as the Homes for Fitness for Human Habitation Act is becoming to the fore in landlords' minds across the UK. So data analytics from these devices can help landlords move towards proactive maintenance regimes, preempting mold, damp, condensation issues before they become problems in repairing the asset, and from litigation claims. So from an operational budget perspective, efficient climate control can be an economic factor for residents and landlords alike. In the US and in the UK, smart thermostats have been some of the early clear winners in smart technology, with savings of anything up to 40% when a landlord limits the heating in a vacant unit. So potentially this also could be more of an issue as our homes move off gas and become electrified. So it's something to consider there. Thirdly, we come to asset protection through damage avoidance and mitigation from water damage. In the US, in the multi-family units, so what we'd consider blocks, water damage accounts for up to 70% of insurance claims. I heard our COO talk about a 14-story building in West Hollywood where we're installing about a year ago. A vacant unit on one of the top floors started leaking. Now, our guys had been working from the ground floor up, and we are about halfway up the building. They thought they nearly finished for the day when the app triggered and you saw that little orange flag, leak detected. So straight away, the team and the building supervisor got that warning notification. The building super got to the front door of the unit, used his phone, opened the unit, got inside, and saw the leak in the ceiling coming through from the unit above. Now that's where the story goes downhill, because our guys had only finished at that level. We couldn't go up a level, so he had to go down and get the keys and go into that unit, and then find out actually it was the unit above that was leaking. So he had to go and get some more keys, and went through that a few times. So just over an hour passed from sensing that leak to turning off the water. And the cost of that one property and water damage alone was over $750,000. So that one leak event could have paid for the owner's entire property portfolio, and it was not insubstantial to be fitted out with smart home equipment. So finally, let's not forget the benefits in terms of resident empowerment. Your residents now live in a smart home they can control via the devices or from their phone. So further narrowing the divide between homeowners and the social sector. Their smart home saves them money, with thermostat automation alone having the potential to save a resident 20% reduction in their energy bills. So as you can see on screen, there are a number of smart features available to the resident that they can then use and then integrate others as they see fit. Rachel's comment, thank you, earlier about COVID-19 and the lens on which to look through how we can deploy smart tech. This is one case, smart rent shelf showings. COVID-19 has been an accelerator of digital innovation and a rapid implementation of low-touch solutions. In fact, in smart rent in the US, we've seen COVID demonstrating a significant upsurge in demand, both for us and our competition in the sector. The self-showing phenomenon actually allows qualified residents access, privacy, and time to think about their new apartment by themselves. Smart locks make viewings easier, reducing the need for accompanying staff and also the health and safety benefits that go along with that. We can also go one step further by authenticating a person online with validation checks at the start of the leasing process. As an example, as lockdown loomed at the end of March in the US, the second largest home builder approached us and asked us how quickly we could get a self-showing system into their homes to support their sales and viewing process. So within a week, we had rolled it out across 77 units. By the 2nd of April, we had covered another 500 unoccupied properties. And 2 weeks later, we were installed in over 2,000 homes across their portfolio in over 35 markets across the US. So this is one example of, we've got a smart unit and a smart home, and we can actually use it to deliver other functions outside of just repairs and maintenance and residents living in their homes. So the evidence across the market in the US is that similar providers of self-showing tours have experienced much the same increase in volume, especially as the leasing cycle moves from in-person and on paper to a full digital experience. So it is possible. We talked earlier about return on investment and what's been some of the landlords' experience. We can see from these couple of reports how some of our commercial real estate customers are improving margins by deploying smart rent as part of their digital transformation across their business. And for me, that's fantastic, because it means we're releasing more funds to then be able to invest in new housing or invest in our existing stock. So in the US, our client Aimco Apartment Homes has installed across over 30,000 homes in late 2019, and their testimonial on the left shows happier residents who stay longer, with fewer keys cut by service team members, and a holistic transformation of their services and their customer experience as a whole. So generally speaking, we know in the US that smart thermostats can save users $180 a year on their electricity bills alone. And anecdotally, private sector implementations have found that automation solutions can reduce on-site staff by up to 60%. And for me, in social housing, that means we can release staff to go and do higher value add activities across the business, helping more vulnerable people. So these are 3 customers. they're not the only ones who've woken up to these opportunities. Across the US, as a business, we've already installed 100,000 units. And if we stop selling today, we've got a backlog of over 1 million units to deploy over the next 2 years for US customers who've already seen the benefits of digital transformation to include a smart home. I think for me, we potentially 2, maybe 3 years behind where the US are, and it's a great opportunity to learn from their experience and move forward. In terms of ROI, on a full smart home deployment, we expect payback within 36 months on 100 units and cost savings and damage mitigation. If we just take leak mitigation, for example, we've got a customer, Shigri Equities. They started to explore smart home technologies. They'd suffered a series of serious damage to 4 buildings across their portfolio, and they went and undertook some analysis. And if they could stop that serious water intrusion before it affected apartments below the apartment where the leak happened, they figured out they could save about $50,000 per year spread across 250 units. So the table on the left summarizes the cost benefit analysis purely on the basis of reducing damage from water leaks. And the cost of that would be a payback in 6 years and a 7-year IRR. So then if we layer on top of that access control and temperature control and the like, the ROI becomes more appealing in terms of delivery of smart homes and the like. So I think Phil and I will be happy to delve into that in further detail with you on a one-on-one basis. If you want to explore that further, we can do that in the Q&A or afterwards on a one-to-one basis. I'm just conscious of time here. There is a demand, D2 demand, 20 for 20 paper, which talks about the progress in innovation and digital transformation in high density or multifamily living, where they interviewed 20 multifamily unit leaders. The report explains how companies have changed their way to innovate, both in the way the activity is resourced and the focus of those innovation activities. And I suppose it's really exciting to see how our sector has started bringing in more and more innovation and digital leads to be able to drive some of this business transformation across our sector. So since this report was published, we're now in a situation where the COVID pandemic is challenging the way the rental housing has run for decades, and previously a high-touch industry. We now encourage the social distance and delivered low-touch services. So it's another challenge, but digital low-touch benefit comes as standard with smart home technology. So to wrap up, I think for me, this technology is not just here about efficiency savings, it's about the potential for fundamental transformation and social housing provision. I think COVID has shown us how effectively things can be done when we're able to harness technology and focus on our priorities. What I'm saying to you is let's not lose that momentum. Let's look at innovation which can provide a step change in the sector. So why do I think SmartRent stands apart from other smart home automation systems? I think its success in the US has been down to the simplicity of its bespoke software, which integrates different technologies to create one single management platform. So each solution can be fully customized and provide you all you need to save costs, protect your assets and improve your customer experience. So let's take what we've learned from COVID and be bold. Let's not lose that momentum, but move forward with transformational technology, which offers the ability to completely change how we deliver services and how social housing tenants live. Smart home technology is a cost-effective way to invest in innovation that's both scalable and impactful as part of a wider business transformation strategy. It's easy to operate, it's empowering, it delivers a better service at a reduced cost, and it's environmentally beneficial too. It is the smart thing to do. So I hope you found that useful. Before we move on to Q&A, we've all had to adapt to our current operating environment and move into this wonderful world of virtual conferences and events. The team at SmartRent, we're hoping to meet you in person, hopefully at, well, the HQN conference is now past, and at other other events. I know it's a poor substitute, but we have some very useful A5 notebooks. We'd be happy to send you in our place. So if you'd welcome an addition to your stationery collection, I invite you to take out your mobile phone, turn on your camera, point it at that QR code, a web browser will pop up, fill in the form, and Rosie from our marketing team will pop one in the mail to you probably next week. And we'll get one sorted for you. So thanks again, and we look forward to answering the questions. I can see there are a couple in the Q&A, and I'm sure John is bursting to ask a question or two.
I am. Thank you, Rody. Very interesting session. It would be good, actually. I think your colleague Phil from the US is with us today, just to have a quick chat with Phil in terms of, presumably, the smart home sort of movement has more of a foothold in the US and is further down the road. And obviously, through the current lockdown period, it's come into its own to some degree. Are you sort of happy just to share your thoughts and experience in terms of the US stuff that perhaps we can look at from UK perspective?
Sure. Yeah, I'd be glad to, John. Thank you. Well, I think that the HACT White Paper touches on a lot of these elements, and Rolly mentioned some of them as well. I guess one of the things that really strikes me is the consistency that our clients have in terms of the benefits that they perceive. Operating efficiencies, energy efficiencies, and asset protection are really common themes that we hear across our clients in various sectors. One example, one of our early UK clients actually came to us, and they were interested in sort of this enterprise smart home solution that everybody's been speaking about today, but they actually had a real problem because they had leak problems within their community, and consequently their insurance premiums were going up at an unacceptable rate. And so we worked with them to put together really a customized package of leak detectors and shutoff valves for their inventory, and this is several hundred units. To help them control those costs, satisfy their insurance company, and actually pay reduced premiums from what they would have paid otherwise. So this asset protection piece, I think, is particularly important, in social housing. There's other sort of downstream implications for damp and mold prevention as well. So it's kind of the ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure phenomenon that we're seeing. The other thing I'd mention, I've been in technology a long time, and enterprise technology sometimes can be daunting because it's sort of an all or nothing proposition. Oftentimes, if you're changing a CRM or if you're changing a operating system, a lot of times you have to switch everything in order to get the benefit. The nice thing about this type of technology is that it can be deployed in smaller units. So we have pilot programs. It's very popular. It's sort of the typical way things go is that our clients will maybe select an area either that they've had problems, or if it's new construction, or some kind of a smaller set of properties where there might be 5 or 10 or 20 different units that they want to deploy the technology, understand how that impacts their daily operations, and then they want to be able to get to see the benefits in a proof of concept. So, that's very common, and we're very open to doing that, of course, with the social housing sector as well.
Fantastic. Thank you for that, Phil, and thank you for joining us. Whereabouts in the US are you?
I am, I'm actually, don't tell my boss, I think I'm supposed to be in Arizona, but I'm in Colorado, but the virtual background is...
you could be anywhere, can you?
Days.
Great stuff. Thank you. I'm just going to pull some of the strands from the discussion we've been having in the chat. There's a couple specifically on smart rent, which I'll pass to Rody shortly. Rody, you did mention the Fitness for Human Habitation Act as being perhaps a catalyst for something like this. And it sort of ties in with Claire's comment about ultimately repairs are the ultimate driver for anything in the sector. Because actually that's really all tenants want from their landlords is a decent repair service and to be left in peace. We're seeing, and certainly RICS have suggested during the lockdown period, the rise in disrepair claims is something that could become a serious situation for social landlords over the next 12 months. And smart technology and predictive technology has the opportunity, I think, to maybe be part of the solution to this in terms of being able to remotely monitor performance in homes. across all sorts of different parts of the repair service, but also the building health. It would be good to just get your thoughts on that, Rodi and Rob.
Do you want to go first, Rob, or shall I go? You're on mute. Shall I go first? Yeah, I go first, right. So yeah, totally. I've heard one of our colleagues in the sector that many of you will know recently talk to a large housing association in the north. I think 5% of their properties have now got claims against them. We're talking about costs per claim of between 10 and 20,000 pounds, just in internal costs alone. So just on the economic side, that's massive, and that's my accountant brain always goes that way. But then we've got the human aspect of that. If there is any evidence that people are living in homes that have damp and have mold, that's not right. And if we can put smart technology in there to be able to be able to have a conversation with Mrs. Miggins to say, actually, do you know that this is happening? And if you continue to not open your window, open your apartment, so on and so forth, that you're going to create a problem that is not going to have a beneficial outcome to your health, then it's something that we need to go after. And I don't know, is it a duty of care? I think probably it is now, because it's in law that we need to go and deliver it, and it's probably more so the, dare I say, ambulance chasers and some of the lawyers that we've heard have gone door stopping, knocking on doors, chasing it. But I suppose that's going to be the stick as opposed to the carrot that's going to drive some of the behavior change to make us more proactive to solve some of these problems.
Yeah, that's right. And if people aren't aware, that obviously the Act came in 2019, but it had a 12-month period when it only applied to new properties. But from this March 2020, it's now all properties, and it obviously covers social and private stock. So it's a major thing. Rob, you talk about catalysts and tipping points in terms of getting things moving on smart homes. Do you think that is potentially one of the key drivers?
Yeah, I think it is. I mean, I think that it's very difficult to not be drawn in for very good and obvious reasons that the pandemics that we faced and the challenges that come with that have both created new problems and solutions, but they've also exacerbated or compounding problems that we had before. Right? So people have always, we're in the business as housing associations of doing reactive repairs. Now, I know that we do lots of other things, and I'm not disputing that, but when you look at the kind of regression analysis and research and so on about what is it that drives customer satisfaction, reactive repairs and, if by extension, planned maintenance and so on, eclipses anything else, which is why when you have the friendliest housing officers in the world and you configure your target operating model for housing management, you don't see a rise in customer satisfaction, because when they say, well, what do you want to do? They say, well, we teach your neighbourhood managers how to fix leaking taps and broken reactive repairs. I mean, I'm being slightly flippant. What I suppose I'm getting at is that in the context of what Rolly's just described, this is not, the problems are evolving, right? And becoming greater or less, and our solutions and our ability to react to that are evolving at the same time. But this is a configurable, the solution is configurable. This is not the days when you bought a bit of kit and it did one thing. And as Phil was just indicated there, it's not like, this isn't snake oil, whatever your problem is, it'll fix it. But it's closer to snake oil in the sense that it's in our hands about how we can use this technology to work. Now, even this, we had a session, at the beginning of lockdown, John, where people were still doing, they were still learning the conventions of how this kind of technology works, right? And everybody went away chuffed, because it was like, well, the housing sector was like, yeah, for good reason, we managed to continue to have these strategic and good, useful conversations and deliver services. And this is a much more at the pointed end. This is the service delivery end. This is the interface, the intersection with customers, and in some cases, very vulnerable customers. So where the problems have been exacerbated with vulnerability, isolation, domestic abuse, all of these things. And some of these problems, which were always real, I mean, people were saying things like, we had no idea we had so many people who were victims of domestic abuse. Yeah. Right? We had no idea we had problems with, et cetera, et cetera. So, in some respects, the thing that our sector has always had going for is persistence and an ambition to try to fix that problem. But if you've got 100 problems, we've now got 1,000 because of this situation. If you've got one less, without doing anything, without a huge amount of investment, this is solving like 7 problems in one go. And I don't, this isn't the bathroom buddy from Gremlins if you're an 80s film fan. What I'm getting at is that we have moved beyond John Major and accountability and public, please call them criminals, their customers and all this sort of stuff. Our accountability is very real to people who are, and the challenges that existed before the new ones have been, that imperative, us being behind the curve, and it's like, well, socialising has got to catch it. That imperative is now even greater. And what was an opportunity is now a risk. Now, I don't want to be the voice of doom here. This is, I'm trying to be, in some respects, the voice of optimism. And this is, the solutions are here. And this is one of them. But someone needs to lead the way.
Thanks for that, Rob. Claire, can I bring you in? You asked the question, or certainly made the comment. Are you convinced? Do you think that the Act is going to change the game? Do you think what you're seeing today is going to be something that could be very useful?
Yeah, I am personally convinced. My concern, worry, I suppose, is about the extent to which we need to win the argument in our own organisations. I think housing organisations tend to actually be quite static and quite intrinsically wed to their systems of engagement with their tenants. That the whole thing about the language that we use about our customers, the word customer is still quite new for a lot of organisations. And I still hear that whole, are they really customers if they haven't chosen? Refrain. So I think that paternalistic behaviour pattern of landlord, just the word landlord, and the behaviour towards tenants. And I think the whole Grenfell thing is pushing us to think, to look inside and to look at our own behaviours and to be quite reflective. And I think that this thing around smart homes, for me certainly, is making me, partly this, but other things as well, but making me think about, the pandemic makes you think of your own life and your own, how you and your family have coped with it, and what your lives are like. And then really wondering, how is that different to tenants' lives? How am I different to a tenant? I'm not, essentially. So
your house, maybe.
Yeah, essentially we're the same people. We're human beings and we live our lives, and we have relationships, we have children, we have jobs, we have stuff in our homes, we have repairs that need doing, we have people that knock at the door, we lose our keys. I'm not saying I've ever been mugged, but I'm as likely to lose my keys to get into my property as a tenant in the sheltered scheme might have dementia or begin to be quite forgetful and might easily lose their keys. Sorry.
No. That's great, Claire. Thank you for that. So yeah, I mean, this actually.
Our kids when you come in during.
I'm sure if we were to speak to every individual delegate on here, they're probably already convinced. It's just, and I suppose this leads on to my question for Rob, is how we build some sort of momentum in terms of smart homes, how we make this a consensus, and actually, we talk a good game, but how do we put this into practice, into something that's actually going to happen? And how is HACT specifically going to do something about it as sort of the great sort of, what do you call yourselves? Crusaders for innovation and change in the sector? I'm not sure you do call yourselves that, but I've just made that up.
The interesting thing, and forgive me if I've said this already, because I do have a tendency to repeat myself, partly because I'm going to keep on saying it until, occasionally we take that step forward. And I think the ambition, the will, and certainly the persistence and the passion and commitment that, worked operationally in housing for 20 years before I did this job, and which is why I was saying, it's not really, a snake oil kind of thing. I think that there is in terms of being crusading or innovation. I don't want to do my own company's organisation, charity, whatever, strapline disservice. But this is as much about adoption as it is about innovation. Yeah. This is quite often the ambition and the passion to do the right thing and to move us forward is actually sometimes our worst enemy. And because there's always a blank sheet, how do we move forward? And I think Claire's point is really absolutely right, that there are a number of assumptions that we need to start to challenge, one of which is that social housing tenants who knew also use the internet, right? Like it was, Claire, I absolutely 100% agree. I mean, I occasionally say this in presentations to people when they go and they have this sort of blank thing, they go, oh my God, he thinks social housing. Oh no, he's making the point that they are, who knew? They use Amazon and order stuff, and Amazon is a monolithic, robotic, whatever, right? But when you interact with it online, it feels very personal, right? We wanted to do big data and big but local and all that kind of stuff. We're not innovating here, right? We understand as a sector, the people in this session, the people who are living every day with the challenges, right? And challenges that you and I, that's why, I'm not coming in saying, well, why can't you just do it different? And I think this is the beauty of SmartRent and what Phil is saying, is that rather than coming in, and that's why I think there's traction and an opportunity here, because he's tested that this works. Okay, it's in America, right? But I'm taking his word for it. The point is that there is an opportunity there for us to say, SmartRent, we've run Launchpad for years, and people will go, well, I can't get any traction with it. I've got this thing that does this, or it does that, or does the next thing. And some of it is no-brainers, and it's worked really well. But there has to be a bridge where we stop saying, I wonder what the private sector does, I wonder how we can make this easier, right? Some things are a big leap, right? This is not a big leap, right? This is an adoption of an existing tech, well, actually, it's an adoption of about 10 technologies all combined into one thing. Right? And it's not expensive. It is, if I can sell data standards from what is a data standard to, oh my God, I've got to have a data standard, right? And it's now a movement with 600, 900 people downloading, and we're all, and it's changing things. Then, I'm happy for people to say you're wrong. Explain yourself, right? If there's a better way, then I'm all ears, right? But this is a proven way of doing things. And I'm not just saying it's only SmartRent does this. It so happens that the point that Claire made and the point that you're making, John, there is absolutely right. Is that Phil, either by design or by the fact that he's coming from outside of the social housing thinking bubble, has come in and said, you tell me how this would work for you and I'll make that thing work for you.
Yeah. So tying in Phil's comments on the chat as well, is there the opportunity to do some sort of pilot? It's about proving the case, isn't it, and bringing it to life and making it happen. Obviously, Rhodey's here today, Rob's here today. You are two organisations that could potentially make this sort of thing happen in real life.
Certainly from the pilot perspective, we can deliver that. We've got the hardware sitting in Europe. We've got UK door lock partners, or we can go with some of the larger global ones. We've got the software platform that we can use. So from our side, we got local UK installers that can come and help either work with DLO teams or maintenance teams, or we can do that installation. We can do it on a block of 4 or 6 units, whatever. And I know, Rob, we've discussed in the past how we can actually use that pilot as a sort of case study to prove the efficacy of it.
Yeah, absolutely. And I spend my life saying, HACT is a charity. We're not consultants. And obviously we need, the data standard, for instance, this kind of technology, these kind of control trials, the pioneering stuff. Let's see if it works. I mean, I noticed. I don't know if he's still on online. I noticed what we refer to in the sector as Data Jesus. Doug Silverstone, who many of you will know, who is more or less single-handedly taking the concept of a management data model, data standards, legacy systems, and all the things that keep us awake at night, and just fixed that problem. I don't want to embarrass you, Doug, but I mean, that was a big leap of faith, and it's a difficult mountain to climb. And I understand this isn't a straightforward process. I've spent years, Mosaic, Peabody, L&Q, East Thames. I worked all of these places trying to kind of get the political alignment, and a lot of the time it's a cultural alignment. Convincing you guys is one thing, right? Helping you to make the case, and the way that you make the case, in the same way that and the reason I mentioned Doug is because that was about saying, here's a data standard, this is how it can work, this is a proof of concept, right? And they took that leap. And I think that I would invite or challenge or whatever your proclivities are, I would, HACT runs control trials. Let's get 4 or 5 organizations, let's put this in, let's do a trial. HACT will promote it as being, this is, we're going to give it a go. Let's move things forward. Let's not wait until we all go back to the office and recreate the silos that we complained about before. Otherwise, don't complain about the silos anymore. Yeah, this is the opportunity to do something about this.
Yeah. So the message today,
if you want to be in a controlled trial.
Exactly. That's the message. So it's not just one potential pilot. There's a number of opportunities for different organisations, and perhaps collaboration as well in terms of the research and the results and the outcomes, and trying to sort of drive the message forward to the wider sector. Rowley, would you like to have the final word before we sign off? You don't have to.
No, well, do you know what? All I'd say is thank you for listening. It's the first step in the process. Rob and I are passionate about it. John's passionate about it. We've got buy-in from the US to support us. You've got some of our details. I think HQN will send out a note with Rob and my details on there. If you want to get in touch and we want to set up a call and go and do that, we'd be really, really pleased to talk with you. I am passionate about what this can do for us providing services to our customers. So really happy to have that conversation and get involved and speak to your leadership teams and your wider business with HACT and anybody else to deliver this change.
That's great. Thank you, Rowley. And thanks very much, Rob, for your input as well, and to Phil in the US. And thanks to everyone for attending today. It's been a great conversation. There are some messages and offers of people wanting to get involved in the pilots already coming through. So it's great news. So yeah, hopefully that's been really useful, and enjoy the rest of your day, everybody. And hopefully I'll see you all soon.